Samanthi Bandara, who is a member of NZer, and I think you actually even came to our AGM, Samanthi, recently. Samanthi is doing a PhD at Canterbury, and has been in the country as long as she's been working on her PhD, I think, and working with, you saw that she's going to talk about using a realist lens, and working in her interviews with disability funding, the individualised disability funding, and her supervisor, I hear, there's a connection to Jeff Mathias, who's also doing a realist workshop. So it's a bit of focus. So make sure you look out for that for NZer, on the NZer website. So Samantha is going to talk to us a little bit about her methodology for doing her work. Welcome, Samantha. Kia ora.
Thank you,
Over to you.
Ruth. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Let me to share my
Whoops.
I hope you can see the first slide.
Can you do it in the presentation mode, like you did before? Sorry, we've had a little practice at this just to make sure that everything's working. So I'm sure Samantha will do that shortly. Yeah.
Right. I hope you can see the first slide.
Perfect.
Ruth? Hold on. System bit delay. Yes. Now it's right. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Thank you, Ruth, for wonderful introduction. So, I'm Samanthi, and this is my second year of my PhD. And yeah, I will explain why I started this study, especially in the disability sector, focusing on disability sector, while I'm presenting the slides. So let's start the presentation first. So you and I are well aware that in program evaluation, we often hear the question, does the program work? However, this question is not always sufficient because the program implementation varies across context, and what works for one person may not work for another. So in other words, one size does not fit all. So that is the principle that realist evaluation explicitly acknowledge. So with that mindset, in my PhD, I'm going to examine individualized funding for disabled New Zealanders through a realist lens. The focus of today's presentation is limited to a critical discussion of the methodological approach that I have adopted in this study. So let's see what is this funding looks like. So this is called individualized funding. That is one of the flexible funding mechanisms available in New Zealand. So it is about personalized financial support given to disabled people and their family and fund. So what is the objective of the allocating this fund is addressing the barriers that prevent disabled people from their ordinary life. So this is started informally in 1990, and a decade after, in 2003, it was officially rolled out. Currently, which is the only disability funding, according to my knowledge, operated nationwide among flexible funding mechanisms. So this operates under the guideline allowed only for home care and personal care and respite care. Then I will explain a little bit about the key features of this the funding mechanism, which is centered on the principle of nothing about us without us. You may have heard about this. And the decision-making power shifted from organization, institutions to disabled people and their families and whānau. So they can place the disabled person at the center of decision making. So they can make their choices, they can decide what they want when they want, and this promote choice and control, inclusion and equity. Ultimately, it promotes independence living. So why I looked at this topic specifically? There are three things I wanted to discuss here. One is the research gap. So when I'm reading the literature, there are plenty of literature, international literature about this subject, but there are very limited the academic papers on this subject available in New Zealand, and most of them are very pragmatic and they used secondary information, and they have done by government and some organization on their specific purposes. So the next is, you may have heard that there are so many changes happening on this individualized funding. And initially that the organization structure has been changed, and the last year they have changed the purchasing guideline. So all these changes include discontinuity of care, loss of trust, and increase in inequity, which are some negative impacts on disabled people. So no one knows that the policy is responsive to the real need of a people. Therefore, then evaluation is necessarily important. So that is another reason. So the other one is the last year, 2024, the Ministry of Social Development, they have done an independent review. That review report specifically emphasized the need of a comprehensive evaluation, that actually the absence of this report hinders the sector's ability to fully understand and address the ongoing systematic inefficiencies. So this further reinforced the research gap and emphasized the need of a comprehensive evaluation. So in addition, the individualized funding works as a financial assistant for realizing national and international obligation. For instance, you may have heard about UNCRPD, that is United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, also New Zealand Disability Strategy. So these are the national and international obligations. Individualized funding comes between these obligations and help to assist realizing the commitments. So finally, this is actually the personal and the professional, the passion of my supporting disabled people. So actually, this is driven by a deep personal and professional passion for supporting individuals with disabilities. So this actually, I have been working with closely with disabled community back in my home country as well as New Zealand. So I have witnessed both challenges and the resilience. So having this methodology actually apply individualized funding is shaped collectively, not only by myself, but with my two supervisors, the Karen Mathias and Sarah Lowell. Three of us shaped this research. Objective, this is the broad objective of my PhD research, that is to examine how, why, for whom, and under what circumstances individualized funding impacts choice, control, participation, inclusion, and equity for disabled people and their family and whānau. So let's look at the methodology. So in this study, I'm going to use the realist evaluation approach. So you may have heard about this black box metaphor. So realist evaluation basically asks how and why does a program work or does not work in different circumstances and contexts. So using this black box metaphor in realist evaluation, that means not to see just whether program is work or not, but to uncover the black box to see how and why a program produce outcomes. It could be intended or unintended. So while uncovering this black box, usually in this methodology, a researcher should ask three questions. What are the underlying mechanisms at work? Under what context does the mechanisms operate? How do they lead to specific outcomes? So answers to these questions are articulated in a structured relationship using context, mechanism, and outcome. You may have heard about CMO configuration, that to describe how different contexts trigger different mechanisms leading to different outcomes. So what is context? That refers to the condition and environment in which an intervention is implemented. This includes social, cultural, institutional, and individual factors. And this methodology is developed by Person and Tilly. Now, they have mentioned three I's. Those are individual, interpersonal relationship, institutions, and infrastructures. Those are the three I's that relates to context. What is the mechanism? Mechanism, the terminology is different. The use of the mechanism terminology mechanism is different in realist evaluation. The mechanism refers to the underlying process, especially the reasoning and responses of individuals that trigger by the resources or opportunities provided by the interventions. I will explain this detail in the next few slides. Outcomes are the results or impact that emerge when the mechanisms are triggered in a particular context. Here we can find intended or unintended outcomes. So let's see the methodology in detail. So realist evaluation is grounded in the critical realism philosophy. So the ontology of this philosophy says that the real world is independent of our knowledge and belief. And the epistemology says that our knowledge is historically situated and that knowledge is subjective to the time and context. And this methodology is the theory driven. That means realist evaluation starts and ends with the theory. It develops, tests, and refine program theories through cycles of data collection and analysis. Also, let's see what is the program theory. Program theory is the idea that assumption underlining how, why, and what circumstances complex social interventions work. So, the data collection and analysis are central to the program theory. That is the important, the feature of this methodology. Therefore, the program theory is the unit of analysis. So data collection will be done through realist interviews. Realist interviews are the one of the interview method under the in-depth interview umbrella. And users teacher learner cycle I will explain in detail in the next few slides. The mechanisms and this methodology, the uses mechanisms and context as the major component of the methodology. And realist evaluation seeks to uncover the underlying mechanisms that produce outcomes. What are the mechanisms in realist evaluation? Mechanisms are why and how people change or don't change when they exposed to an intervention. It is the reasoning and reaction of individual in response to resource offered by the intervention within a specific context. So that is highly important to look at this reasoning and reaction, which is not we can touch surface. So we have to have in-depth discussion and analysis to unearth reasoning and reactions. And it also emphasized the importance of context, that is, recognizing the same intervention will not work everywhere for everyone. So data analysis is done using Brown and Clark's reflexive thematic analysis. Importantly, this methodology produce or generate actionable knowledge that decision makers can use. And another important point I wanted to highlight is that realist evaluation is also ideal for analyzing complex and highly diverse social program like health and disability. So this is the basic structure of this methodology. And first, I will explain the few details about the methodology. This is a qualitative methods-based study. Mainly data collection come from interviews, and I will do one workshop supported by literature. An interview with both service providers. Service providers means ministries and the private organization, both will be here. And users, 10 people from each group. And my initial plan is to bring service providers across regions and users only from the Canterbury region. Because of my limitation of the time and the PhD, the criteria. The study run in 3 phases. These are the 3 phases you can see in this picture. And this is a common approach. But if you can see the sequence, but sequence as an order, but the beauty is that the flexibility. That means wherever we are in the roadmap, in any phase, we can revisit each phase and recheck, refine the theory. So that is the flexibility is there. So the sampling in realist evaluation is another thing that I wanted to highlight. It is theory-based. That means choosing respondent purposefully to reflect different perspective about the program, not to balance the number of participants or not to bring consensus. And I, as a researcher, needs to think who can tell me what about context, mechanism, and outcomes. So I will explain the teacher-learner cycle. This is the very fancy diagram I'm going to show you. Here the subject of the traditional in-depth interview, the people, the community. But here the subject is the program theory. And let me to bring the first. Hold on. Right. So the first, this is me, the researcher. So I'm going to meet the respondents, let's say the disabled people. What I'm doing is I'm taking the preliminary research, the program theory. We call it the hypothesis, and which is under test. And I'm going to explain the methodology, the program theory in the layman language to the participants. Then what participants are doing is they learn the conceptual structure of this the program theory and apply it to their knowledge. So here I'm the teacher and the respondent become the learners. So once first I explain the hypothesis, then they apply their knowledge and experience into that hypothesis, and they became a teacher, and they started explaining me that how they are starting teaching me about how the program theory can be refined or challenged it too with their experience. So then I become the learner. So what I'm doing is the researcher learns participants' responses, validate and refine the theory. So then after that, there may be questions from me to the participants, and the participants then respond to me based on their experience. So this is not a kind of a one-to-one interview. This flow is quite natural, the natural and conversation style. The realist hypotheses are not confirmed or abandoned through saturation of interviews. You may know about that. Always in the qualitative interview, we focus on the saturation. Here we are not talking about the saturation, but what I am doing is using multiple types of data obtained from multi-method strategy. So accordingly, the unit of analysis is here the person. Therefore, the small number of people, small number of the participants with broad knowledge about the program and a few round of interviews would be adequate to test and refine the theories. So this is the real example of my the study. This is the preliminary the program theory developed, and this is hypothesis, and this actually the represent my the early assumption or idea about this study about the individualized funding. So this hypothesis also show how the intervention is supposed to work, why it works, and for whom it works, and under what circumstances. Under what circumstances. So this hypothesis we will I'm going to use to refine throughout this process and through data collection and analysis. And here, the program theory can be elaborated in different way. You can use schematic diagram, or you can use just use descriptive, the just layman language. So I use here if, then, because proposition. So the program theory here, I'm reading if disabled people and their family, Vano, are provided with accessible information, training, and support to manage individualized funding. That is called context. Then they are more likely to self-direct their own support arrangement. So that is called outcome, because these resources enable them to feel capable of exercising autonomy and control. So this is the basic, very basic, the program theory. At the initial stage that I call this is hypothesis. So then this is what I'm taking and go to the field and talk with the people using the teacher-learner cycle. This is one example I wanted to show you. So the program actually a program doesn't work universally. So it works because certain mechanisms are triggered with certain context leading to specific outcome. So also here I wanted to tell you that you can see that these context mechanism are interrelated, right? So I focus only mechanism. So here in the mechanism that I explain here, that means the feeling of being capable of exercising autonomy and control. This arises from individuals interpret and respond to the resources and their opportunities that has been provided by the intervention. So this reflects their internal reasoning. For example, so they believe in their own competencies, they feel or their perception of being freedom to make choices. So that always the mechanisms are born, how they are going to respond to the intervention's resources. So importantly, this mechanism is triggered when the context supports it. That is highly important because mechanism cannot work alone. It has to be the proper context. So that is program theory. And in summary, before the last slide, in summary, I wanted to show you the difference between traditional evaluation and realist evaluation. So basically, scientific studies asking, does the intervention work? So it could be experimental or it could be statistical testing. So in this traditional evaluation, we often miss the deeper causal explanations or variant that affect in different contexts. So also it has limitations to explain why and how intervention success or fail, and that try objectively understand how an intervention works. So in realist evaluation, we are asking basically couple of questions. How, what works for who, under what circumstances? So we are trying to understand the deep or hidden factors that drive the intervention's outcome in specific context. So here we can use quantitative method, qualitative, or the mixed method, because this is method neutral. In this realist evaluation is a method neutral the approach. So we can use explicit theories, so unpacking mechanism and context. As I mentioned earlier, this is ideal for complex social programs and policies interventions where outcomes vary by settings and population. So these are my anticipated outcome. So the one is this methodology is going to unearth underlying mechanisms and contextual factors that shape outcomes of individualized funding. Also expecting to bring realist informed knowledge to the decision making space, especially in the disability sector. And this is a kind of a novel approach that this methodology is going to apply into this disability sector. And so that will add new knowledge to the literature. These are the very basic idea. And these are some of reference. And thank you so much. It's done.